Although we are cooped up inside our homes, we as gamers are still on the lookout for some new games to play. Now that this quarantine has gone on for too long, I think I speak for most of us when I say we will play anything at this point, because we need something new, literally anything. Some of the RPGs on this list are highly anticipated, and some are less known, but looking to be a treat for any RPG fan. Some large name developers and publishers, and some are smaller, but all with a similar goal to tell a story in one way or the other. So why don't we delve into the deep caverns of 10 new upcoming role-playing games that are actually worth your attention. Elden Ring is being developed by From Software, the same company behind the Dark Souls series, Bloodborne, and Sekiro, among others. So they clearly have a great track record, and also to add on to their potential success is that George R.R. Martin is collaborating with them on the game. My man's is doing everything but releasing the next book in the Game of Thrones series. But how can I be mad at having him help with a game that looks absolutely incredible? There still isn't a ton of information surrounding the game as well as gameplay, but what we do know is quite interesting. From Software's president, Hidetaka Miyazaki, says it will be an open world action RPG, but not one that's going to have towns. So something similar to what we have seen with them doing right in the past, just expanding upon it a little bit. So that does mean that you're going to see some challenging boss fights. Really, we still don't know a lot about the game. It is mostly speculation, but with who is working on it and their track record, it sounds like it's going to be another amazing action RPG is going to come out of this. For younger gamers out there who have never heard of the Baldurs Gate series, well, it is a huge influence within the RPG landscape, with the first one releasing back in 1998. It created a lot of the things that we take for granted in RPGs nowadays, and now we are finally going to receive the third one within the series. Baldurs Gate 3 will be coming out sometime around 20 years later after the second one released in September of 2000, with the game actually releasing in early access first. The game is going to be based upon the 5th edition of the Dungeons and Dragons rule set that is bred better for a video game and will have custom characters in order for the player to feel more deeply connected to the story and its lore. The combat is a turn-based combat system that is a little bit more interactive this time around, which is more usual to how a Dungeons and Dragons game would go. When playing in real life, there are things that the mind imagines that a video game usually wouldn't have, such as taking your boot off your foot if you lost your sword and throwing it at your enemy as maybe like a last dance or a distraction. As of right now, we know that there will be 7 different races and 6 different classes, with each having 2 unique archetypes to choose from. The game is going to offer a ton, and for fans of the series and the other series with lore attached to the Baldur's Gate world, hopefully we will see the release this summer, as is rumored to be, but who knows how the quarantine has affected development. The game is shaping up to be a true successor in the Baldur's Gate series. Another Dungeons and Dragons world? Well, this one's set directly within their IP. That will be a 4-player co-op role-playing game. Dungeons and Dragons Dark Alliance is said to be the spiritual successor to the Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance title that released for PlayStation 2 back in 2004. The game is looking to be released in the fall of 2020, so hopefully Turk Games, which is I believe how you say it, can stay on track with that, and we can get our hands on this year. The trailer is quite messy and somewhat trippy, not sure how much I actually like that point of view of the CGI characters, but it shows off the theme of what you will get yourself into. The game will be set in the freezing Icewind Dale, with its story drawing upon certain elements from the R.A. Salvatore novels that thicken its plot surrounding the main character Drist Duerden and his companions of the Hall. I have a feeling it will be something similar to the Warhammer Vermintide titles, with a first-person perspective and a kind of grungy, messy combat filled with smashing hordes of enemies as you fight through levels, but I'm sure there's going to be a little bit more of a focus on the storyline, kind of unsimilar to the Vermintide titles. There is no specific date for release, but we do know that it's going to be coming out sometime this year. Godfall, a third-person fantasy looter and slasher title being developed by Counterplay Games and being published by Gearbox. It's gearing up to be released for the PlayStation 5 at holiday time at the end of this year. The game looks gorgeous in its trailers when it was released several months ago, and by the time it is released and on a next-gen console, I'm sure it will look a lot better and actually more polished. The fantasy world is going to be filled with heroic knights and ancient magic, where the game's armor is going to play a large role. The armor that you loot and equipped can be augmented with mods that gives the player certain abilities or casting offensive spells. The combat looks similar to Sekiro, where you can parry and riposte your enemies' attacks, with the combat surrounding tougher bosses and group encounters, or even some stealthy encounters where you have to sneak past your enemy. Godfall looks to blend a progression system similar to Dark Souls and God of War, with a looting system of games like Borderlands and The Division. It is no doubt that the graphics look great, and the third-person combat seems to be interesting, but what we do not know a lot about is the story and the content that will be tackling within the game. The game can be played in single player or up to 3 other of your friends in co-op, and it will be an exclusive release for the PlayStation 5. It is exciting to see that the new consoles are putting together their early titles, and as far as Godfall goes, hopefully we can get more information on it soon. Torchlight 3 has gone through a lot of changes over the years because, well, only recently did Torchlight 3 become part of existence. Originally, it was Torchlight Frontiers, where the game was looking to go away from what made the Torchlight series so popular and enjoyable, which was the single player and co-op experience for a one-time fee. They were looking to open up the game to what you would see in something like Path of Exile, where the progression was more horizontal. But once a lot of skepticism came from fans about Torchlight Frontiers, they eventually decided to go and switch up their development to move the game over to what is now Torchlight 3. It is still going to allow players to meet other players in public towns, make parties with them, and play together, but like Torchlight 1 and 2, the act and progression structure will be in Torchlight 3. Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And while I think Torchlight Frontiers could have been something exciting to see with the Torchlight IP, I think they are games that do well already with their formula. Their last update on a release was in March, where they said there would be an open beta soon and that the game would be released this year at some point. Now, if you have never played Torchlight 1 and 2, it is very similar to Diablo or Path of Exile, but much more of a single player and offline experience game. Bloodlines 2 is the sequel to the first Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Jeez, the title has a thesis, a supporting paragraph, and a closing, god. That originally launched in 2004. The story is going to follow a human that you will define and create its background around, such as being a pizza delivery man, or maybe a salesman, that is eventually killed and then revived as a vampire that, unfortunately, you're gonna have some weak vampiric abilities. That's kind of sad. Nonetheless, it will take place in Seattle and entirely throughout the night. The backgrounds I talked about will play a part in adding specific bonuses to your character, as well as you'll be able to customize the appearance and even the pronoun that you would like to be called within the game. The game has 5 different vampire clans, as well as 5 different factions within Seattle, but I'm not entirely sure what defines the factions as such and what the layover with clans will be, but it has been said that you can join multiple factions at a time, yet they can come into conflict with each other, so just know that. The game was originally set to release in March, but has been pushed back for a later release this year. This title is an open world RPG that puts the player into the perspective of a samurai that is trying to defend his home on the island of Tsushima. The island has a variety of different environments and terrains that range from lush and gorgeous forests to rugged and towering mountains with towns filled of characters. Now, the island of Tsushima is located off of Japan, and Sucker Punch, who are the developers, have done a lot of research in order to capture the island accurately. The story unfolds as you try to gain allies as you defend your home against an army invasion that will involve the player having to go into melee combat against some small, medium, and larger groups of enemies, but also having to take stealthy precautions in order to advance through some leveling. Since you will be going toe-to-toe with the Mongol army, there is an antagonist worthy of trying to take down, and that the developer said is an uncomfortably reasonable killer. Now, if you're not familiar with Sucker Punch Productions, they are the same ones behind the Infamous series and the Sly collection, so the quality of their games can definitely speak to their achievements, and I'm sure Ghost of Tsushima will see some similar gameplay and hopefully some similar success. The game is set to release on July 17th. The sequel to the successful Dying Light 1 is getting itself ready to release at the later part of this year after a delay to their original aim to release it during the springtime. Nonetheless, the game looks stunning, and this title is another one that will be releasing on the next-gen consoles, PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. The developers are saying that the game will deliver with over 100 hours of content, and the campaign being 15 to 20 hours. Not sure if that's separate or included. Dying Light 2 will take place 15 years after the first one, so its state is a little bit more in decay than it was before. This time around, the player's choices are far more impactful, because depending on how you decide to respond to certain situations, the story reacts from it. The actions that you choose will affect the world, such as the threat level of the zombies and the enemies around you, all the way to the abundance or the scarcity of resources within the world. If you were a fan of the first one, no doubt this one looks to be intriguing, so hopefully those who are fans can get themselves on a next-gen console in order to be able to try this one out later in the year. Gods and Monsters is an action RPG that is being developed by Ubisoft. The game is an open world set on an island that is filled with vibrant and prosperous lands accompanied by some dangerous Greek monsters. You will play Phoenix, who you're going to be able to customize to your liking, and then you're going to help out the gods of Olympus defend themselves against these Greek monsters, and eventually the deadliest one of them all in all of Greek mythology, Typhon. Since the same branch of Ubisoft is behind the development of this game as Assassin's Creed's Odyssey, they used the research from that title as an influence for their light and humor story in this one. The story is narrated by Homer, who is retelling the tale to his grandchildren as you make your way through the story, and as children always do, they're going to interrupt, which is where the humor will pour into the game's story. The game presents itself with cel-shading graphics, and the main character with a sword, bow, arrows, and the use of a stamina meter. So many have actually drawn the influence to Zelda's Breath of the Wild. It definitely looks similar, but with the limited gameplay, we don't really know how close it's going to be. Also, similarly to Assassin's Creed Odyssey, the player can change their appearance, their armor, the gear, and the stats to how they would like. It has also been said that the game will feature puzzles and dungeons to explore, so definitely a very interesting game by the looks of what has been shown off so far. The game was originally slated to release in February, but has since been pushed back to a later date this year, which is unknown to the public as of right now. Here it is, the granddaddy of them all. What is there to say about this game that hasn't already been covered 1,000 times over? From the freedom to create the character you want, to do what you want, to go wherever you want and explore what you want, it has it all. Not only is the game going to be monumental when it is released, but its DLC has been mapped out and developed so the organized path for content is set, and it has been said to have as much DLC as The Witcher 3. The game is looking to present something we have never seen in not just an RPG before, but in a game. So with all of its delays, we will finally get our hands on this game on September 17th of this year. Hopefully all is going well with the development during these times and we don't see another delay. But at this point, with all the delays, I mean, I could stay patient for its release, but this is the one to top them all. The games on this list have some substance behind them, and they look to deliver some new and interesting gameplay. Given our situation at the moment, I understand it is hard for the game designers and developers to communicate their processes, but I hope that these games aren't affected too much to where we can still see them release this year. Are you guys looking forward to any of these games, or are there some other RPGs that are on your radar? Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you guys did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.